friends, it's Christy. Welcome back to my channel. Today I'm going to be making a card using the new Lawn Fawn set, Two Can Do It, and also Critters in the Jungle. So I've stamped my images out on some Spectrum Noir Ultra Smooth Premium White cardstock with Lawn Fawn Jet Black ink. I've also stamped some additional leaves, which I've set off to the side and will be coloring off screen since they're just duplicates of the images I already have stamped out for you here. I'm going to start with these little cheetahs, or they could be leopards or jaguars. They're so cute. So I'm using YR20, YR21, and YR23 for them. So I'm taking that YR23 first and laying in my shadows wherever I think that they should go. On the underside of the tail and down the back side of the body, and then a little bit on the right hand side as well, just to kind of lift her off the page a bit. I'm also going to be coloring the muzzle to be just a little bit darker than the rest of the body. So once I have that YR23 laid in, I'm going to blend that out with the YR21. And then I'll fill in the highlighted areas with the YR20. And I will do a second layer off screen as well, just to kind of deepen that saturation and blend out everything nice and smooth. But I'll do that off screen to save some time. I wanted to warm her up a bit, so I'm going to take a Y11 marker and just go over the highlighted areas just to give her a little bit more of a golden tone. And then I'm going to color in the second one. So I'm doing his shadows first with that YR23, and I did skip over the spots, but you really don't have to, especially if you're going to color them to be black like I am, or even like a dark brown color. If you were going to color them dark, you probably could just color them in and not worry about them, but I'm just in the habit of skipping over the little spots of, you know, little mushrooms or any kind of thing that you color, so that's what I did. But I don't think it's a necessary step and would probably save you just a little bit of time anyway with your coloring. So I'm doing the same thing for him, just casting his shadows a little bit differently since his body is turned more to the side than what I'm calling the girl one for this. I don't think, you know, either one could be boy or girl, but that's just the way that I'm seeing it in my head. So then I'm taking that YR20 and blending out the highlight in the center of the body. I'm going to leave a little white belly. I left a little white on the chest of the girl as well, so I thought it would be nice to have a little white belly on him. I'll grab my colorless blender to just smooth that transition into the white area, and then I will go back with that Y11 and just warm him up a bit as well. I really like how that Y11 lays over this and just gives them that golden glow. I absolutely love these little jaguars. I think they're some of the cutest images to come out of Lawn Fawn in a really long time, and I love the cuteness of Lawn Fawn's images, so that's really saying a lot. For the black areas, I'm going to use W3, W5, and W7. Starting with that W7, I'm going to color in the tips of their ears and their noses, and then all of their little spots and the tips of their tails with these shades. So I just used the W7 and W5 on the nose, but I think everywhere else, except for maybe one or two really small spots, I did squeeze in all three shades just to give them that little extra bit of dimension. It always gives you more dimension if you've got contrast between your darkest darks and your lightest lights. So just having that just gives them a little extra lift. So I'll do his spots exactly the same way, just quickly filling them all in and just making them look extra cute. Like I said, I think like a dark brown would be really cute on them as well. But I decided to go with the black for this card because I thought it would tie in with the toucans as well. And speaking of those toucans, I think they are so cute. This whole set is just super darling. All of the images that you see stamped out here are from this Toucan Do It stamp set, with the exception of the smaller leaf. That's the only image that I pulled from Critters in the Jungle. So all the rest are in the Toucan Do It stamp set, and I just adore this set so much. I think it's just beyond cute. So I'm moving on now to my toucans and using those same shades. I want them to look black, but I want them to have some dimension to them. I don't want them to look just flat, as they probably would if you colored them with just a flat black. So I used W7 again as my darkest, just added a little bit of shadow to the tips of the wings and the tail and the top of the head, and then blended out with the W5. And then use the W3 as my highlight shade. For the one with his wings spread out, I did it pretty much the same, but I did accentuate the lines of the wings just a bit more, drawing them out a little bit longer than the artist drawn lines, just to give them some extra definition. And then again, just filled in with that highlight shade, the W3. And then finally, I'm going to use these shades to color in the tips of the butterfly's wings. I think having them in black just really adds a lot of pop to the other colors that you apply. So I went ahead and did those. And then I'm going to move on to some yellows for the toucan's faces. I'm going to use Y13, Y15, and Y17. And I like to keep the lightest color over the eye so that you can really see their personalities. So I'm going to use that Y17 towards the back of the head, the Y15 in the center, and then the Y13 for most of the face toward the beak, and then also fill in the little dots on the butterfly with those shades. Next, I'll be using some red. I picked R22, R24, and R29. So I'm going to do the first section of the toucan's beaks. And I started with that R29, and then I'm blending that up with the R24, and then I'll use the R22 as the highlight. I'm also going to color the hibiscus flowers to be red. I like to use the colors at least 2 places on a card whenever possible, just to kind of tie everything together and make it look cohesive. So I'm using the R29 closest to the center of the flower, and then blending lighter and lighter as I get toward the tips of each petal, and I'm even going to lighten them further by adding in a touch of R20. And then I'll use the R20, R22, and R24 to color in the rest of the butterfly. So it'll be just a shade lighter than the toucan's beaks, and tie in nicely with the hibiscus. Next, I'm going to use orange, and I picked YR04, YR07, and YR09. I'm going to do the next section of the toucan's beaks and then also their feet. So I used the YR09 first, and then the YR07, and finished with the YR04 for the highlight. I even squeezed in all 3 shades on their little feet. And then for the tips of the toucan's beaks, I wanted kind of a bluish green. So I used G02, G03, and G05 for those. And then to tie in this shade of green in another area of the card, I decided to do one of the leaves, but I wanted it to be just a bit darker. So I also added in the G09. So I'm using the G09 first to outline this small leaf from Critters in the Jungle. I just did a line down the center and then also at the bottom of each of the little sections of the leaf. And then I skipped over the G05. I went straight to the G03 and blended out with the G02. For the lizard, I wanted something that was a little bit more of a yellow green, so I picked YG00, YG01, YG03, and YG05, starting with the YG05 down at the bottom and blending up with the YG03. And then I'm going to finish his body with the YG01 and save the little stripes on his back for the YG00. And now that all of my critters are colored in, I'm going to go back and add rosy cheeks to all of them. So I'm using R11 and R20 for those. Just adding a little oval shape first with the R20, and then I take the R11 and just trace around the edges of that, and it just softens that color into their skin or fur tone. For the trees, I wanted to do something that was a little bit more of a grayish, something that might be in the rainforest. So I chose E70, E71, and E74. I'm using the E74 to outline the bottom edge of each of those branches. And then I'm blending toward the top with the E71. And then I'll use the E70 for the highlight because that's where the sun would be hitting it at the top there. So then I'm going to go back in with a darker shade. I'm using the E79 to add a little bit of texture to the wood, just create the look of some bark by doing some little scribbly lines and little circles and rings to give it that wood grain look. For the leaves on the branches, I wanted to go with a dark green, so I picked G24 and G29, just doing a little line on the underside of each leaf with the G29 and blending out with the G24. They're really small, so just the two shades I think works well. And then for the more fern looking leaf, I wanted to do something a little unexpected. So I went with some teal and I picked BG11, BG13, and BG18. So I'm doing a little line on the underside of each leaf with the BG18 first, and then blending that out with the BG13, just making sure to catch the edge of that BG18 because there is quite a bit of difference between those two marker shades. So I want to make sure I have a nice smooth blend. And then I'll go over each one again at the top with the BG11. And remember, I have those extra leaves that I'm coloring off to the side, so I still will have 2 pops of the turquoise. For the last leaf, I decided to go back to the same greens that I'd used for my lizard, and I'm just going to do this last leaf just the same as I did with the small leaf above. I just outlined the center line and then the bottom of each of the little sections with the darkest shade, which was the YG05, and then I blended out with the YG03. Then I'm taking the YG01 and I'm going to fill in most of the rest of the area. I wanted a lot of contrast on this one since it's such a large leaf. So I did throw in a 4th shade, which is the YG00. Once the coloring was done, I grabbed a black Sakura jelly roll marker and went over the eyes of all of the critters that have them open. And then I'm going to trim these images out with their matching dies. For my background, I've die cut a piece of Bristol smooth surface cardstock with the second largest of the large stitch rectangle stackables, and I'm going to blend on some Salvage Patina Distress Oxide ink in the center. So I'm just laying that down in a circular motion. And then I'm going to bring in some Mowed Lawn, and I'm going to blend that in from all 4 edges. So I'm bringing that up right to the edge of the Salvage Patina and even allowing it to overlap just the slightest bit so I get a smooth transition from shade to shade. but I don't want to lose that salvage patina in the center. So I will go back to that blending tool and just blend over the transition between those two shades again and make sure that that salvage patina is really present in the middle there. So I'm just working my way back and forth a little bit here, and then I'm going to darken that up even further with some Lucky Clover. And I think the Lucky Clover really ties the green together with the blue because it has a little bit of a bluish tint to it. So I really liked how these shades worked together. This was my first time using them together. So I worked my way back to the center again until I was happy with the blend, and then I'm going to press down some of that salvage patina and also the Lucky Clover onto my work surface, add a bit of water to both of those and mix those up with a fine paintbrush. And then I'm going to add some splatter detail all over that background just to give it a little extra texture and some more movement and just a little bit, more to catch the eye back there. And then I wanted to darken that up even more, so I decided to add in just a touch of black soot. I thought this would tie in nicely with the toucans and the spots on the little jaguars. So I did some super fine droplets with the black soot as well, and then I set this panel aside to dry. In the meantime, I'm going to stamp my sentiment using Noble Fur ink onto a piece of scrap white cardstock. And that stamped perfectly the first time, so I'll set that aside, pop my card base in my MISTI. I made that out of cilantro cardstock. I'm going to stamp the little hashtag party animal from the Wild For You stamp set, and then also use the parrot from Critters in the Jungle. And then I'm going to grab a piece of pattern paper from the new Watercolor Wishes Rainbow 6x6 set. And I thought I would use this polka dot with the green and turquoise polka dots. I thought that tied in perfectly with the background. So I die cut that with the largest of the large stitch rectangle stackables. So it has that nice stitching detail to match the focal panel. I'm going to glue that down to my card base with my Lawn Fawn glue tube. I had to just clear out the nozzle a little bit there off to the side so I could get that flowing again. And then I'll line that up with the edges of the card front and smooth that down into place. Then I'm going to work on my focal panel, so I'll bring in my little dish of images. I'm going to start with the larger leaves because I want a cluster of those in each corner, and they're going to be behind my jaguars. So I'm going to take one of the teal leaves and then one of the larger kind of chartreuse leaves, and I'm going to make a little cluster in each corner. I really like symmetry. I think it adds a lot of balance to a scene. So I'm going to put both of the teal leaves on the outer edges and then the chartreuse leaves tipped a little bit more toward the center. And then I'll take one of the small blue or green leaves and I'm going to add that kind of on its side, hanging off the edge of the focal panel just a little bit. Then I'll add my jaguars, and I added glue to the backs of both of them at the same time so that I could get them spaced just right apart from each other and also lay them down quickly so that I could adjust those leaves if I needed to. I'll add the larger tree branch over on the left just above the lady jaguar's head, or what I'm calling the girl jaguar in this instance, and then the smaller tree branch I'm going to have on the right side, and I'm going to let the back of the branch hang off just a little bit so I can trim off the white edges that hang over the card. On the smaller branch, I'm going to add the toucan that's flapping his wings, and then on the larger branch, I'm going to add the other toucan and the little lizard. Behind him, I'm going to add one of the little leaves from Critters in the Jungle. I wanted him to have a bit of foliage in case he needed to hide from any potential predators. So I wanted to just have a little bit more of a lush looking jungle, and then I added my lizard in front. I added my butterfly below the branch, and then I took my 3 hibiscus flowers that I colored. So I put one over on the left and one on the right, again for that symmetry. I just tried to make sure they were pointing in different directions though, so they look a little more natural. And then the third one I thought about tucking up at the top, but decided to add that down at the left-hand side as well, since there was a little extra space on that side of the card, so that helped fill it in. I die cut my sentiment with one of the everyday sentiment banners, and I'm going to glue that at the top right, and then I will flip the focal panel over and trim off the rest of the sentiment banner, and then the 2 edges of the branches like I mentioned. I'm going to let the leaves hang over the edges though. I added some foam tape to the back of my focal panel, so I'll peel off those release papers, line that focal panel up in the center of the card, and press that down into place. And then as a finishing touch, I decided to add just a tiny touch of Stardust Stickles. I added it to the stamens on the centers of my hibiscus, and then also to the edges of my butterfly's wings, and to the stripes on the lizard's backs. So not too crazy. I didn't want to cover up too much of the coloring, but I just wanted to have a little extra something. So I'm going to lift that up to the camera so you can see all of the detail and how that catches the light, and I'll give you another peek at the inside. This video is also on the Lawn Fawn channel today, so if you'd like to check it out there as well, you can. And if you're interested in any of the products I use, you'll find them listed and linked in the description bar below. If you like the video, please give it a thumbs up and subscribe to my channel. Ring that notification bell so you don't miss any future videos. I post new ones every Monday and Friday. And if you'd like to keep watching right now, here are 2 extra videos I thought you might also enjoy. Thank you guys so much again for watching. I hope you have an absolutely amazing day. Bye-bye.